Hey, what's up? What's going on, guys? My name is Ivan Temelkov, entrepreneur, digital practitioner, and startup owner of a digital agency, RazorSharpDigital.com. We'll help brands forge their digital governance through human-to-human convergence. Hence, everything that I talk about is human centricity and human marketing, with no exception to what I'm about to talk to you guys right now, and that is the number one problem that every company faces and ways to rectify it. Okay, and I think we're back. I'm hoping that I was experiencing a very bad internet connection there. I'm hoping that we are back. And I want to dive straight into what I want to talk to you guys about today, and that is the number one problem every company faces and ways to rectify it. This video is a follow up. And by the way, this is actually my second YouTube live session, so I'm pretty ecstatic about that. Thank you so much for tuning into this. I really appreciate it. Let's talk about the number one problem every company faces and ways to rectify. This video is a follow-up to a Medium article that I just wrote on that talks about the number one problem, which I believe that all companies struggle with, and this is also small businesses, which are prime example of that is communication. Communication is the number one issue that companies face, and let me extrapolate this a little bit further, because I think it's important to recognize where those failures are happening and also ways that you can rectify your communication approach to attribute to better results and avoid any repercussions as a result of poor communication. Communication is a core part of the human experience, is what we do as human beings. So it's important to recognize first and foremost that even in business, it's even more intricate that communication helps solve problems. We interact, we communicate, employees communicate with upper management, other employees interact with each other. So communication is a huge part of business. And I feel like this is an area that is significantly untapped. So much potential around improving communication and generating better results for your business. So let me talk about those things specifically. In an independent study, over 62% of responders in that study quit their jobs due to poor communication. So the response, 62% of responders in an independent study stated that they quit their jobs as a result of poor communication. Wow, I mean that's quite a bit mind-boggling when you think about it. Is that people quit their jobs because of poor communication, and this is particularly true with people who maybe even have six-figure jobs, six-figure paying jobs, because communication with those six-figure paying jobs is even more intricate. With that being said, I think it's important to recognize that communication is one of those things that a lot of companies are failing to recognize. And let's talk more specifically about ways that communication can be rectified to where you have better communication that can generate better results for your company. Clear expectations. That is probably one of the first and foremost things that, from a communication standpoint specifically, that a lot of companies fail at, is establishing realistic expectations to be able to generate realistic results. Now, if these expectations are not set in place, then obviously there's not going to be realistic results. So, prime example is just that most times companies convey certain expectations to their employees specifically, or to one individual to another, and the outcome is not the exact of what they hoped for, due to the fact that there were unrealistic expectations that were put forth. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is making sure that realistic expectations are set forth, whether it's through email, phone, text, social media, video, either of those. Succinct messaging helps ensure thorough comprehension. So, interestingly enough, is a lot of people still don't know what the meaning of the word succinct is. So much that I personally have been asked multiple times of the definition of succinct. Well, there is this thing Google, if you know. So if you Google the meaning of succinct, here's what the meaning is. Especially of something written or spoken, briefly and clearly expressed. Briefly and clearly expressed. So brief and clear. Brief and clear. That is succinct. Succinct messaging. It's brief and clear. I think what happens a lot of times from a communication standpoint is a lot of people ponder around their core message to the point to where they forget to actually convey their core message, and they end up talking about something that's somewhat related or completely unrelated to their core message. So how can you be a more succinct communicator? What does that really mean, right? From a communication standpoint, is be more expressive, convey clear messaging, exercise optimism. Also, be timely, be cordial, and understand the need of collaboration and why that must happen to express succinct messaging. Consistency can also contribute to longevity and evolution. So you have to be consistent with your communication. You have to be on point. You have to be persistent with it. Don't be annoying and pushy also, because a lot of people do not like people who are very pushy, very arrogant, or even come across as overly ambitious. There's a fine line in that you have to find the balance of. Follow-ups present unprecedented amount of potential for progress. Now, a lot of people fail to follow up. That's the reality of it. It's because as human beings, we're very scattered, we're forgetful, we're preoccupied with everything else to the point to where we forget to follow up on things that truly, really matter. That's something that Gary Vaynerchuk actually would say, a huge idol of mine who has really changed my business mentality. And perhaps some of you guys who are watching this video also recognize who Gary Vaynerchuk is. As he said, 90% of the things that we do on a daily basis do not matter. So in follow-ups and communication, really focus on the things that matter and be more follow up, be more persistent, be more diligent, and focus on the things that do matter, that are going to have some impact and generate some results. Patience is a virtue, and we also help pave a path to communication success. Now, is another quote that Gary Vee mentioned: focus on the macro and micro aspects of business. Now, this is a quote that mainly pertains to business, but I think it's also relevant to communication and exercising patience in communication, particularly in the way that companies and individuals exercise that patience for short-term and long-term. Now, here's what I mean specifically: is don't be too quick on the trigger, don't respond too quickly, think things through and craft a very well thought out message before following up. Be patient with responses between multiple parties also. So be very cognizant that, if this is a multi-person communication, is that you're not the only one who's on the communication line. And then put forth benchmarks around patience also. So for instance, if you don't receive a response to that email within a day, what is your protocol? What is your process, to follow up from there? And then the last one, this is a bonus element that I wanted to mention as it pertains to the number one problem that all companies face and ways to rectify, and that being communication as the problem, is cultural complexities and identifying significance in communication. And this is actually a suggestion that came from J.S. Gilbert, who's the author of The Influencer Effect. And he actually contributed to this when I posed the question in a new Facebook group called the Human Marketing Hub, who is fueled by none other than Brian Cramer, who in the marketing world, for those marketers watching, surely rings a bell. But I posed the question, and his response to this was, I think the number one problem the businesses face is a complex culture that makes it difficult to identify and agree as to what significant problems are and how they should be addressed. Very, very bold statement right there. And I'm actually very, very ecstatic that J.S. Gilbert actually took the time to respond and share his input on this. So again, guys, this was my second, to be more precise, second dose Facebook Live session in talking about the number one problem every company faces and ways to rectify it, and that being communication. Now, communication is something that, for me personally, just in closing, I was not, I was never the greatest communicator. As a matter of fact, for a big part of my life, I was probably one of the worst communicators, simply because I think that there was also a language barrier involved in this, being Eastern European, speaking Slavic language, and English being a second language. I think there was a communication barrier. But over the course of time, especially over the last 11 years, spending time in boutique agency world, working with other marketers, other individuals, I think that has contributed to the perfection of my communication. And that is the only way. I think experience, trial and error is really the best way to learn and become a better communicator. I truly hope that you guys get some value out of this session. I would love for you to check out my article, bit.ly/comproblems, COMM dash problems. It'll also be linked in the description of this video. Really appreciate you watching. If I can help you in any way possible, make sure you check out my company, RazorSharpDigital.com. It is a digital agency startup that helps brands forge their digital governance through human-to-human convergence. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This was my second YouTube live session, and I'll be back. Peace.